Hi everybody, welcome to Khong Driving. Let's talk about the different types of drive that you get in your cars today. So starting from the early tradition when cars were first made, they were traditionally rear wheel drive, which means the engine's in the front like this one, yeah? This is the Mercedes SLR, and the engine is in the front. Of course, this one is a very powerful engine, and the drive is at the back. So this is what you call a front engine rear drive car, and the engine is fitted this way. There's this called longitudinal. Is it longitudinal? Yes, longitudinal engine, and so that's why the front is longer. And then you have a transmission, and the drive goes to the rear. So the dog is barking, sorry about that. So this was how the traditional cars were built, and so the front engine rear wheel drive cars still exist today, and you can see them in the nice cars, yeah, like for example the Toyota 86, the Toyota Supra, of course most of the Mercs also have front wheel drive now, but the more traditional Mercs like the 3C, C-Class and E-Class, they are front engine rear wheel drive. Of course the Mercedes sports cars are all like this also, front engine rear wheel drive. And also of course BMW, yeah, 3 Series, 4 Series and 7 Series and BMWs are front engine rear wheel drive. And then in the development of sports cars, they came about the mid-engine car. So this one is a Lotus Elise, and the Elise engine is just fitted in front of the rear wheel. So looking at the front camera in front, the engine is fitted here, and you can see that it's just in front or on top and a bit more to the front of the rear wheels. And of course the passenger compartment is here, so the engine, transmission and driver and passenger all sit inside the wheelbase, yeah. So all the weight is inside, and there's very little overhang, and there's very little weight on the outside. So this car handles supposedly like a dream. Okay, so that's why the Lotus, despite it having a smaller engine, always handles very well. So this is how Lotus cars were built. Now there are a lot of other cars with the mid-engine concept, and that would be the Toyota MR2, the MRZ, MRS, sorry, Toyota MR2, MRS, and also the Lotus cars, and of course some of the Ferraris and Lamborghinis and all, they have mid-engines, yeah. So these are mostly for sports car, because if you put the engine here, it effectively makes it a two-seater. There are very few mid-engine cars that can do. In fact, I don't think I know of any mid-engine car that has more than 2 seats. Yeah, so that is the mid-engine car, and is mostly for sports cars, and of course it handles very well. Now this one is a bit of a unique situation. This is the Porsche. Okay, this is a beautiful GT3 model, yeah, with a bonnet and boot opening. Engine is at the back. So if you look at the camera, you can see the engine's at the back, and so you can see that the engine is behind the rear wheels, yeah. They try to put it as close as possible, and then of course the passenger compartment is here, and this is how it grew. It just came to be like that. So Porsche started as it started from Volkswagen, yeah, and because of the Volkswagen Beetle, they were able to build Porsches, and the early Porsche 356 was looked very much like a Beetle, and it had the engine at the rear. So the rear engine, of course it was built from the Volkswagen platform, yeah, or derived from it, and so that's how Porsches grew. And as they became a force to be reckoned with, they went into racing, and so this Porsche shape has been around for, I think this would be around close to 60 years, this shape, basically the engine at the back and drive at the back. So it's rear engine, rear wheel drive. And so these cars supposedly don't handle very well, but what they have done is, when you have a lot of power, there's a tendency for the tail to slide out. So what they have done is they put in electronics and stuff to help the traction and also help to control the car. And also they run very positive camber in the front, so when you power, it just pushes the front. Yeah, so well, they are not the best handling cars, but they make up for it in terms of power. But if you drive a modern Porsche now versus an ordinary car, of course the Porsche will handle well because they have built it so well, they got so much experience. And of course the Porsche cannot beat a mid-engine car in terms of handling. So what Porsches do is they make the engines very powerful, and of course this is an icon for you to have. So if you ask me, does that mean that rear engine, rear wheel drive is no good? I say, no sir. So does that mean you won't want a Porsche? I say, yes sir, I want a Porsche. But Porsche also have another one, it's called the Cayman. And the Cayman has got a mid-engine arrangement. And the Cayman supposedly handles much better than the 911. Now that's a fact, okay? So they have the Cayman GT4, which is a good car, which I've driven and I really love it because it handles very well. Then in the late 50s and early 60s, the front wheel drive car came about. It all started with the Mini, you know, the humble Mini that was meant to be a people's car, and it was built in England, and it was very, very small. It's about the size of a Kancil or a Kalisa. Now that was the size of original Mini. Of course, now the Mini has grown to a big car, and they have all-wheel drive, they have 300 horsepower, they have all kinds of things. But the original Mini, I think in 59, was the first front-wheel drive. Front-wheel drive means engine is in the front and it drives. Okay, here's another sample. Let me see. Can I open the bonnet? Let's open the bonnet. I don't want to break the car. Ah, there you are. So here, let's show this Ford Focus. Yeah. Now here you have the engine in the front, and if you look at it from the side, that camera, yeah, you can see that the engine just sits on top of the front wheels, and in some places, in some cars, it sits just behind the front wheels. But most of the time, it's just on top. And this one is a bit older. The Focus is about 10 years old in design, or maybe 15, and the engine sits on top of the front wheels, slightly to the front. Now, so the front wheel drive, when it first came out, it was a way of making the car cheaper to produce because there's no prop shaft and the drivetrain is all in the front. So in the early days, the Mini was actually quite a basic car, but in the early 60s, Mini Cooper won the Rally of Monte Carlo, or rather the Monte Carlo Rally. Of course, it was a Cooper S and it had twin carburetors, racing cams and all. But the Mini was so agile and it handled so well because it was front wheel drive, and in conditions of snow, it outran everybody else because on the slippery roads, the front wheel drive had the advantage. And so the Mini became famous, and then after that, bit by bit, the industry continued to adopt front wheel drive. So let me just very quickly talk to you about the front wheel drive cars now. Front wheel drive, of course, Audi and Volkswagen generally front wheel drive, and of course they also have all wheel drive cars, but Audi and Volkswagen really like front wheel drive, and they believe that's the way to go. Of course, Audi also has all-wheel drive, and so does Volkswagen, like for example the Golf R. And of course, all the smaller Toyota models that you see in the country today, the Vios, and also the Honda City, Honda Civic, the Corolla, and also the Camry and the Accord, they're all front-wheel drive cars. So are the Peugeots and the Kias and the Hyundais. Mostly front-wheel drive. Because why? Front-wheel drive cars actually have good handling, and they also help to save fuel, and they are much cheaper to make than rear-wheel drive cars. Okay, and so this is the front-wheel drive, and of course then they also have the last type, which is all-wheel drive, and this is the sorry, this is the very small version. This is the Mazda CX-5. They have two-wheel drive and four-wheel drive versions. So, well, this is a model I'm just showing you. And SUVs used to be SUVs were all four-wheel drive. So, and such was also the case with the light trucks. Yeah, like your Ford Ranger, your Toyota Hilux, your Mitsubishi Triton, your Nissan Navara, and Isuzu. They have part-time all-wheel drive and full-time all-wheel drive. So full-time all-wheel drive cars would be like Subaru. Most of the Subaru cars are all-wheel drive. In fact, all of them are all-wheel drive. They don't have any part-time, yeah. And some of the other cars also have. They may not be selling here. Like the Golf R is full-time all-wheel drive, and drive is to all four wheels at all times. You can drive it on tarmac or on off-road. For those part-time four-wheel drives, the drive systems are a little bit different, and they are stronger and they lock together, and they are not meant to be driven on tarmac in the dry, because they'll have some problem with the transmission wind up. So okay, so why is it that the cars like BMW 3 Series, Mercedes C-Class, and also the E-Class, and of course also the BMW 3 Series, 5 Series, 7 Series, why do they still have rear-wheel drive? Well, that's because for rear-wheel drive, there are certain driving pleasures that you can't get on a front-wheel drive. Like you've seen my videos going up the Genting, I drove a BMW 330i, the F30, and I also drove, that is a rear-wheel drive, and I also drove the Supra rear-wheel drive, and I drove the Toyota 86. And if anybody had watched those videos, you would have seen the smile ratio was very high, right? And I also drove the RCZ, that is that's front engine rear-wheel drive, but that's a sports car, and that also was rear-wheel drive, and it was really nice and enjoyable, yeah. And of course with rear-wheel drive, you can drive with the tail out position. It's easy to make the car slide, and the drift cars, you can't drift with a front-wheel drive car, yeah. You need rear-wheel drive to power and put the tail out and drift. So rear-wheel drive cars are fun, and the thinking is, of course, that you must have rear-wheel drive in order to enjoy the car. And so BMW, Mercedes, and even Lotus, they have their cars are rear-wheel drive, and Porsche, you know. So they are still sticking to the rear-wheel drive models, because that's where the draw is, the attraction is. Personally, for me, if you ask me to choose between a front-wheel drive and a rear-wheel drive, of course I will go for rear-wheel drive, yeah. So then why do people go front-wheel drive? Because front-wheel drive cars are easier to make. They also are more economical to drive, because in the same engine in a car, there is front-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive, everything else remaining the same. The prop shaft carrying the drive to the back, and the drivetrain will be heavier and longer, and there's also transmission loss. So they have done this study many years ago. When you have the wheels driven directly in the front versus the wheels driven at the back, there is a bit of a power loss, yeah. And so the cars on rear-wheel drive are not as economical. Now, everything else being constant, yes, the rear-wheel drive will drink a bit more fuel, but certain car makers still swear by the rear wheel drive, and I do not blame them because I agree with them. So the front wheel drive cars, they are very easy to make. You can have more room in the center, and there's no transmission tunnel, so you can have flat bottom at the back. It gives you more space to build your interior of the car, and so on and so on. And then in terms of driving, front wheel drive cars are relatively easier to drive because you can just point and you squirt, yeah. So because the front wheels are pulling the car along. Of course, the disadvantage of a front wheel drive car when they take off is every time you accelerate, the front goes up, so you get axle tramping, get tung 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 tung. You know, the wheels bouncing in the car because as you are trying to take off, the front is lifting up, so the wheels start bouncing. So that's called axle tramping. Now, rear wheel drive cars also can axle tramp if you don't set up the suspension properly, and I've done that before. So both will tramp. But the front wheel drive acceleration tramping will be a bit more, so you got to be careful when you accelerate. But in terms of uphill climbing, generally when you climb uphill, the rear wheel drive car can climb better. Then once you get to the top, now imagine two cars having exactly the same power. You get to the top, the rear wheel drive will be in front, the front wheel drive will be at the back, because with the front wheel drive you get more wheel spin, because as you go uphill, and you're accelerating, the front lifts up, so you get less traction. But when you start going downhill, the front wheel drive becomes faster because it's downhill and it's the weights in the front, so the car will track better and will drive better. So there's no such thing as a perfect car, okay? So if you have to choose, well, sometimes you can't choose because most of the lower price cars are front wheel drive, and the more expensive cars are rear wheel drive. So if you have a choice, that means you can afford the more expensive car, then you might want to consider a rear wheel drive car. But having said that, there are some very good front wheel drive cars. I won't go into brands because we're not supposed to be selling brands here. But there are some very good front wheel drive cars, and they are very popular and drive very well. And then of course there are some very good rear wheel drive cars that are very popular also, and they drive very well, and also they have the all-wheel drive. So guys, I wanted to show you the difference between the all-wheel drive, front wheel drive and rear wheel drive. And so I hope that you can benefit from this, and if you like our video, please share. And thank you for watching. Till we meet again, bye bye.